Hello everyone and welcome on back to Smart Dash Auto Repair. Today we are working on a 2014 Honda Accord. We are replacing this little O-ring that seems to fail quite often when things are installed correctly. So this was sent to me from a client of mine stating that they had it serviced at the Honda dealership and they mentioned that it was leaking coolant. So after further investigation, as you can tell, there is a tiny bit of rubber gasket right there that is exposed from where the seal goes. So right there, the pipe is a coolant crossover that goes directly from the water pump to the housing. And so as you can see, it looks like it was not installed correctly. So we're going to be installing a new O-ring because that one looks to be too big. These only come in one size. There's a different size for the V6. This is the size for the 4-cylinder, which is the Earthdreams 2.4. So let's get on into it. So all right, first things first, you want to take off the battery. 2 10 mils, real quick and easy. And there's some tabs that you want to basically remove down here. That will allow the battery cable to be lifted up. Sometimes they're a pain in the butt. And you want to remove the actual tie down straps. Oh, looks like I need a deep well. And we have it the majority of the way. Just go ahead and remove it from the actual battery post down below. And you can then remove the battery. Perfect. Let me adjust my lighting here. There we go. Sorry for the shaky camera. Anyway, so we want to, looks like we want to basically clear off as much room as possible. We're going to be taking off this upper radiator hose. Also going to be taking off this. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that vacuum line. Pop this off, set it aside, set that aside as well. We're going to be taking this thermostat housing off this way. There are 3 bolts. They are 12 millimeters. We're also going to be moving this and moving this. So let's get right to it. Once you start removing the airbox, actually, let's just do that while we're here. So it's easy. Let me get an extension. It's not tall enough or long enough. That's what she said. So far we've used 10 mils and we're going to be using a 12 mil. Go ahead and unplug the mat, set it aside. We need to undo this. It's just a normal Phillips. Okay. Move that away. Okay, set that over there. Take out the airbox. Easy peasy removal. All right, set that aside. Now we're gonna move the actual ECU. Don't lose the bolts. I'm gonna scoot that over a little bit. All right, cool. So now we have a little bit more room. We're going to take this upper radiator hose off after I can jimmy this thing off, but looks like it's being a turd, so whatever. Just gonna go ahead and take the hose off. So get the normal pliers, pop that off. We're also gonna pop off this one, which is for the transmission cooler and the lower. Where's the upper? It's the upper heater core hose. So let's do it. So we're gonna go ahead and snap this off. Okay, wiggle this bad boy off. Sometimes you need to crack them. I do recommend either getting a clamp tool or zip ties to hold it up. So that way you're not losing any coolant any more so than what you already are. Also, before I do this, I'm going to put a drip tray underneath at the engine bay, so that way it's not getting on the carpet beneath. So we're going to go ahead and snap this off. Okay, wiggle this bad boy off. Sometimes you need to crack them. I do recommend either getting a clamp tool or zip ties to hold it up, so that way you're not losing any coolant any more so than what you already are. Also, before I do this, I'm going to put a drip tray underneath at the engine bay, so that way it's not getting on the carpet beneath. So here's my drip tray. I'm going to put that underneath. Basically make sure that if there's any mess, there you go. It all goes down to that pan. So anyways, here's my zip ties. I'm going to start the zip tie in this little hole. These aren't long enough, so I already hear the fluid. But Dash, you could totally remove the coolant before you do this. Yeah, absolutely, but I don't want to do all that because every time you remove the coolant, people state that you should put it back in. Well, I don't like doing that for a couple reasons, because there's a lot of contaminants that are involved when you go that route. So this is the route I like to take. If you like to take another route, that's cool, but that's not what I do. And as any mechanic would say, there's 1,000 ways to do one thing. We're going to go ahead and remove the transmission cooler. Pinch myself. Just like that one's being a bit weird. So we're going to give it a little turn. There you go. That breaks the line loose. This one leaks a lot. Yeah, there we go. Set this one aside. I'm just going to direct it down to where my area is at. This is definitely a messy job. So, like I said, we zip tied. Let's see if I can show you guys that. Zip tied that. Undid the transmission cooler line. And now we need to undo to the top heater core hose. And from there, it's pretty straightforward. Okay. See if I can break this one loose. Yep, there we go. All right, then I'm just gonna remove it back. A little wiggle. There we go. Cool. So now, the reason why I removed this one is because there is a nut that's holding on the thermostat housing in the back, which is 12. So there's one at the back. There's one up here where my finger's at, and there's one underneath. And basically, you're just gonna have to push. It's kind of in a weird spot. You can get it with a flex socket, but it's okay to fit back there with just a 12 mil. So let's get to it. Let me go get my 1/2 inch. Okay, so now at this point, you've done quite a bit. We're gonna go ahead and get your 12 mil. We'll just start loosening it up. I like to loosen in a sort of crisscross order. There's the front. Like I said, the back one is in the back. That's why we had to remove one of the heater core hoses. There we go. That one's loose. And just kind of work your way around. The bottom one's kind of a pain to get to if you don't have a flex socket, but we make it work. There you go. All right. I'm just going to take this one off down here. You're going to see this entire assembly move this way, but I'm going to remove this. That's how those clips are supposed to work. Okay, so this entire assembly is going to be moving this way. There's a 10 mil down here that is basically holding the pipe into place, so to speak, if you will. Not really that much, but I'm going to go ahead and loosen that with a 10 mil. So it's right below one of the vacuum sensors. So here it is. Boom. Just a 10 mil. Set that aside. All right, now that that's removed, all we got to do is remove the 12 mil bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen all these up and take them off. That's what the two look like. There's one. Set that aside, don't lose it. Okay. I'm going to remove the lower one, and then I will remove the top one. Make sure you don't lose these bolts. It's in a pretty tight spot. This one's always fun because it's in a, whew, got it. That's what it looks like. There's that one, set that aside. And then we got the nut in the back. And then from there, this entire assembly, the thermostat housing assembly, just comes right off. Be careful not to lose the nut in the back. It's kind of a pain. Okay, I got it. There's the nut. Beautiful. Set it aside. Now you can literally just do this. And it's all gonna move. All right. So we're getting stuck on something. It looks like it's this hose right here. So I'm gonna undo that hose real quick. It's another coolant line. Down at the bottom. Looks like it needs cracked. There we go. There we go. And they should just pull right out like butter sometimes. Okay, there we go. As you can hear, it's dripping all over my pan down there. But now we have access to exactly what we came in here for. So, wow. You can definitely tell that it's pinched. I might have to get a flat head to pull this off just to show you guys. Looks like it's pretty tight on there. But there's a piece of the O-ring. Could be why it's leaking. So let's go ahead and pop that off with a flat head. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, right there. That's the O-ring that we are replacing. Get a better view of it. Down here, that O-ring right there is the one that we are replacing. The 10 mil goes in that bolt, or in that little area. I'm about to pop this thing off and show you guys what it looks like when it's not installed properly. It's crazy that this came from a dealership. I don't even want to know how much they paid. Okay. Wow. There it is, folks. So that's what the O-ring looks like. Messed up. So we're going to go ahead and get the new one on, which is this one. But before we do that, I'm going to wipe the area down inside of the housing. Just verify there's nothing sharp or in the way. Doesn't look like it. Cool. I don't think there's anything on the pipe itself, so should be able to go ahead and install it. So let's do it. If you want to lube this thing up real quick with some lubricant, so make sure that it gets a nice seat, go ahead and do that. So let me grab some. All right, so I went ahead and put some lubricant on this thing as best as I could without getting too crazy. Lube is always your best friend. Wink, wink. So I'm gonna slap this bad boy on. Push the thermostat housing to the side. Slap it on. That sounded great. Then from there, we're gonna wiggle the actual housing onto it. But first I'm gonna wipe my hands because it's all lubed up. Alrighty. So now that we have ridden our hands of lube, we're going to wiggle the thermostat housing onto the pipe. So in order to do that, it's kind of tricky because you do not want to pinch it. Yep, and there we go. Just wiggled it on. I recommend putting the 10 mil in first. That way it secures the pipe into the thermostat housing. And excuse my light, oh, it's so bright. So that way it doesn't wiggle out. So right now, as you can see, let me show you guys, we are perfectly seated from the pipe into the housing. Let's see if I can get some more light on there for you. So, as you see, we're seated properly. It looks completely different than it did earlier. Let me see if I can put the flash on. It's not gonna let me. So as you can see, there's no rubber anywhere to be seen. And that's how it's supposed to be installed. See, there's no rubber. It's all metal. That's how it's supposed to be perfectly sealed. So you want to move the thermostat housing on the pipe itself. Wiggle it on, put some lube on to help, get it in, if you feel me. And therefore we have a pretty nice seat. So now we just need to put everything back together. So like I said, let's put that 10 mil in right there first. So that way it holds it in place and then we'll start wiggling it on. All right, so we're gonna put that 10 mil on first. Not all the way, just enough. Well, at any rate, so I tried to fiddle with it for a second. And instead what I did is I put the top bolt in and the rear nut in, and then I also put the bottom bolt in. During which I made sure that nothing wiggled out of place. Pretty much you want that thing to stay, you want the housing to stay where it's at. You do not want it to wiggle out of the housing. You want the pipe to stay right into that housing, firm and in place. As long as you have that, you have a good seal. So I'm gonna work on the bottom one. Get that bad boy in there real quick. Looks like it's threading, like it should. I feel it. A lot of this stuff, guys, is just feel. Especially when cross thread comes into play. You want to be very careful not to cross thread anything, especially aluminum. So it looks like that's in there. Okay. Just gonna tighten all these up finger tight. And this is obviously holding coolant and there's no gasket. I'm not sure why, but so make sure you want to crisscross as far as tightening is concerned, because you want this to be perfectly set on the head itself. Looks like it's on the head. Yeah, it's on the head. Okay, so now that those are good, we're gonna see if we can put this 10 mil in now that's holding the pipe together. It still looks like it's being a bear. Okay, well, we're just gonna give it a second. We're gonna focus on some other items because it doesn't look like it has actually moved at all. It's a huge plus. Looks like everything is still intact. Everything is seated like it should. That's great news. Cool. So if I show you, see everything is still seated. There's no rubber that shows. I mean, you see a little rubber right now, but that lets us know that there's a seal. Nothing is exposed or popping out like it was. That's when you know that it's installed wrong. And this right here is when you know it's installed right. Nothing is bulging out. Pause. So cool. Alrighty. So I'm going to go ahead and start tightening the 12mm bolts on the housing. Okay. Like I said, you want to do it in a series. Okay. To make sure they're all snug. Okay. They're all in there. So now we're going to see if we can get the 10mm in for the pipe. And for some reason, it's still being a little wonky. Maybe that's why these things pinch so many times, is that it's a pain in the butt to install. So instead of getting on to the mechanic, maybe it's the design itself. So at any rate, let's verify that it did not move. It doesn't look like it's moved at all. Let's see what's looking like in there. Oh, so it looks like we need to go up a little bit. See that? Yeah, we want to get in that hole for the 10mm. But the good news is that the pipe itself is fully sealed. And so we're just going to go ahead and shimmy that bolt in and then go from there. So it looks like it needs to go up. So let's do that. I'm going to try to figure this out, shimmy it in there, and then tighten it up. So we'll go from there. All right, so let's see if I can figure this out and I'll report back. Alrighty, so what I did, the rubber piece just needed moved up, so I just stuck an Allen wrench in and basically pried it up, so that way the rubber mount allowed me to push in the bolt itself. And then from there, I'm gonna go ahead and screw that bad boy in. Actually, it doesn't look like that. That worked out. Maybe that's why this is a problem so much. Seems like a design flaw. So, I was able to get it on. As you tell, everything is still seated properly. Exactly what you want. Any sort of pinch is gonna leak. You're hearing it here first. Any pinch is going to leak. You want a perfect seal. Coolant does not fuck around. So, anyways, I just had to wiggle this rubber mount up a bit more, and then from there I was able to get the bolt in. Easy peasy. So now, we just need to bolt everything up. So let's get right to it. I'm gonna start by doing the rear heater core hose. And we already know that the bolts are tight. Very good. For the thermostat housing, they are solid. And we checked them all the way around. 1, 2, 3, all the same foot-pounds. Now, I mean, I could totally do the manufacturer spec on that, but I've done this enough that these things are pretty solid when they're snug on there. So I went ahead and clamped the the top heater hose. Clamp it on there, pretty easy. Now you want to do this one, the leaker. You can go in any sort of fashion that you want, any sort of order. With the hoses, there's really none. Just make sure you put the hoses on top, especially if you work on this vehicle. If you work on the vehicle often, that is. I always recommend putting them on top, because clamps are a pain in the butt to deal with if they are not in the spot where you would like them to be for ease of access. So gonna go ahead and put all these clamps on. And I try to follow the same pattern that was initially there. It's always a good bet, just in case. All right, now that one's on. I'm gonna pop on the cables. And we're good from this side. That hose is on. We're gonna pop it into the clips. And I always go over my work just in case, so we know that this bolt is tight. We know the bottom bolt is also tight. The rear bolt is tight. Check the bottom one just in case. Oh yeah, that's good. Okay, I know that those are all good. I always like to do checks just in case. Some people like to mark it, the bolt, with, you know, paint or nail polish or whatever. But so tight, tight, tight. This is also tight over here. The seal is on appropriately. The top heater core hose is on. The transmission line cooler is on. The other transmission cooler line is on. This is on, that's intact. So now we need to put the upper radiator hose on. So let's go ahead and do that. And then from there, I'm gonna remove my zip tie. All right, cool. Easy peasy. Yes, I could use different pliers, but these are Old Faithful. So like I said, always put it up. Try to follow the same spot if you can, where you put the clamp on. Now, the upper radiator hose is on. That's good. Now we can start putting the rest of the stuff back together. So I'm gonna guide you guys over here. We're gonna move the ECU into its appropriate spot. And then we're just gonna put on a bunch of 10 mils. So the first 10 mil, okay, is there. All right, what am I doing? Wasting my time. Always use this. Ratcheting the dates. Great, saves so much time. This is one of the best investments I've ever had myself. It's chemo. I got it from Amazon. It's a 3/8 ratcheting wrench, and it saves a lot of this. So I went ahead and put the ECU on. Now we need to put the air box back in. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. There's a portion in the bottom that needs to go in first. And then from there, just make sure everything is lined up. Okay, lined up here, lined up there. Okay, on. On. As you can tell, this is a lifesaver. Put the MAF in. Clip it. What a wonderful, wonderfully satisfying sound. Now just go ahead and pop in the, I forget what kind of cover this is called. Basically, you just want to pop that back in. There's some grooves that it sits in. And you'll feel it go into place. Put this back where it was. Boom. All right, so everything is tight. Now we just need to put the battery in. So let's go ahead and do that. But if you want, I recommend putting some sort of water to pull all the rest of that coolant down so it doesn't just sit there and collect a lot of dirt. So I'm gonna do that real quick and then I'm gonna throw the battery in. Stay tuned. Alrighty, after you've cleaned all that up, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up your area so that we can put battery in. Let's go ahead and put the battery in. There it is, it's on. We want to put the battery tie downs on first. And it's pretty straightforward. There's these hooks that hook into a little I guess port or hole is the right term. And if you're doing this, you'll definitely see what I'm referring to. Now we just want to tighten them on there. Make sure that the hook is clipped into the hole. I'm going to tighten it up now with my handy dandy notebook. Okay, do both sides. Okay. Doesn't need to be too tight as long as it's on there. As you can tell, it ain't going nowhere. So now at that point, you just need to put the battery terminals back on. As far as the order is concerned, it doesn't really matter. Cool. Both on, make sure they're seated properly. Okay, don't go too crazy. You don't want to mess up these terminals. Okay, as long as they're snug, they are good. Then we want to put the cap back on to reduce the amount of corrosion that goes onto the positive terminal. All right, and there, from that point, now you need to refill it back up with coolant. So I would recommend filling up the entire radiator with coolant first. So you want it to be around right here. And then at that point, you start the vehicle and you want to burp the system or bleed the system. And so basically you'll be doing this and doing that on the lower and upper radiator hose, so that way you can bleed the air out of the system. And then at that point, once the engine gets to optimal temperature and the radiator is full, you're good to go. So if you had any questions about, you know, bleeding the coolant system or adding coolant, definitely check out either another video, or there should be a link in the description for another video of me explaining that measure, but it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to put back what we took out coolant wise and go from there. All right, so Dash Auto Repair out. Peace.